Dear guests, let's initiate this session. Thank you for joining us. As you know, our title is Coexistence, and we're going to look at practices, problems, and policies. This is a very important topic, and also it is a challenging one. Municipalities from time to time find this difficult, but municipalities also feel that this is a very visible area, and it gives a lot of ground to the municipalities. As you know, our cities compared to the past are much more cosmopolitan because of globalization, because of immigration, economic and social, as well as political problems. All of these have had an impact on our cities. Our cities are no longer stable as they once were. They're no longer homogeneous. They're much more cosmopolitan in nature. And nation states also have been creating an awareness regarding statehood, and the concept of who is alien or who is the foreigner has been compounded. And these problems actually pertain to local authorities and municipalities as well. And also, as you know, many politicians on many political topics in terms of inclusion and equality, there have been some changes, and many of these changes actually start from local authorities. That is the case in the West, in Europe, as well as in Turkey. Local authorities are dynamic in nature compared to central governments. And as you know, after the proclamation of the Republic, the first local elections took place in 1930 in Turkey, as per the pursuant to the relevant law. And for the first time, women were able to receive the right to be elected as mayors, city council members. And then in 1934, this franchise was extended, and universal suffrage was adopted for the Grand National Assembly. Now, these developments actually propel us to think about local authorities, reassess the role of civil society, and so on and so forth. Now, I would like to touch upon a couple of things in my opening remarks. As you know, the concept of citizenship is one of the most important in a nation state. It is a contract, a political tie between the citizen and the state. And then there's the concept of the foreigner. From a legal point of view, someone who is a foreigner, who is an alien, is someone who is not a citizen of a given country. But within citizens, actually, there are people who are shunned, who feel shunned and who feel disenfranchised. And therefore, the problem is not just the foreigners, and also citizens who are shunned in a given society. And also, there are political issues, social issues at stake, and there are things that pertain to people's day-to-day lives, and all of these are actually important in terms of coexistence. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our panelists to you, starting with the gentleman to my left, Şerdil Dara Odabaşı, Mayor of Kadıköy district in Istanbul. He's going to talk about his municipality's practices. And by the way, our guest Anita Messen hails from Sweden. She's going to speak in Swedish, so please get hold of headsets if you wish to follow the translation. Thank you. And Mr. Mayor, every panelist has 15 minutes tops because we would like to dedicate the last 15 minutes to Q&A, so please make sure that you do not go beyond this allocated time. Thank you. Hello everyone. First of all, I need to lean over because I'm a bit tall. I'd like to apologize for that. Dear participants, ladies and gentlemen, today I will talk about different perspectives vis-a-vis management of cities. I'm delighted to be here in your ranks here today. Now, as municipality of Kadıköy, we focus on many different urban problems. We want our resolutions to be lasting. And in order to achieve that, I think in cooperation with all the stakeholders, we need to get together, join our forces, and find a solution. So I'd like to thank the Marmara Municipalities Association for giving us this opportunity. I think it is important that we remain in cooperation and that we remain in touch. Today, we are here to discuss many topics, threats, solutions, and so on and so forth. And I'm going to offer you the perspective of Kadıköy Municipality. Let's now focus on our shared problems. And then I will tell you about what we do as Kadıköy Municipality, our practices, our approaches, and social cohesion, and give you some examples also. As you know, all throughout history, this holds true for every country, every city, that there is no fixed definition of what a city is. Of course, there are some legal arrangements, some definitions that we turn to, but these are open to change and open to interpretation. As a result, there might be different definitions of what constitutes a city, and different paradigms, different schools of thought, and different ideologies may have different perceptions of what a city should be. But despite all these differences, there is something that we should reach a consensus about, which is the fact that cities are fed through political processes, social processes, and as such they're dynamic realms. And cities also affect one another and feed one another, and as such they perpetuate dynamism. And the cities, what makes cities a center of attraction is this dynamism. This dynamism in the industrialized nations, starting with the 18th century, we saw that the ratio between rural areas and cities changed in favor of cities. Turkey industrialized rather late, and this shift only took place in the second half of 20th century. And one of the most important problems of today and the future is actually indicated in this graph. According to UN World Urbanization Expectations Revision, in 1960, 33% of the overall population lived in cities in Turkey. This was 31%. And as per the same report, right now, around 55% of the global population live in cities. And in Turkey, this has skyrocketed all the way up to 75%. And come 2050, this will surpass 85% in Turkey. Another reminder, the population of Turkey will be around 1 million come 2050, and 85 million of these people will be living in the cities. So in short, we can say that Turkey is urbanizing really rapidly, and we can unfortunately not say that this is a planned process in Turkey. And we know that in Turkey, especially, there's a lot of concentration on one single city, namely Istanbul, and will continue to be the case in the future. So the fact that the urban population is increasing in an unplanned fashion, we can say that there will be some serious ramifications of this, and Istanbul is going to be much more vulnerable to this in the future. Let us remind ourselves that the population of Istanbul, starting with 1950, every 20 years doubled, more than doubled. There were 1.6 million people living in 1950, and in 2010 it had surpassed 13 million. Right now, 15 million people officially reside in Istanbul, but when you add to that people who live in Istanbul but who are not Turkish citizens, refugees, irregular migrants, foreign students, and expats, currently actually the number totals 16 million, more than 16 million. Of course, urban population, or increasing urban population is not just a local matter, but a nationwide matter. In Kadıköy, for instance, we are presented with certain difficulties and certain developments. As you know, in Turkey, especially compared to Europe, we have a very young population. As per Turkish Statistics Institute, between 15 to 24 years of age, we have 13 million people living in Turkey, and as such, around 15% of the population is in schooling age. And also, there has been an increase in the number of university students, and as demand is rising, supply is also going up. And as per the Higher Board of Education in Turkey, there are 62 universities in Istanbul alone, and in 1992 I was admitted to the School of Law, Istanbul University in Istanbul, and there were only 6 universities at the time. So again, the number has increased more than tenfold, and the number of students, university students, also increased tremendously. This is actually more than the total number of universities in the Netherlands and Greece put together. 1/3 of all Turkish universities are in Istanbul, and the number of students is more than 1 million here in Istanbul. That's the number of university students. And within our district, there are 8 universities, their campuses and their faculties. But Kadıköy is also a center of attraction for many young people, not just universities. Young people feel free in Kadıköy. They are offered a plethora of opportunities. It's a district that's easily accessed. So of late, interest for Kadıköy has appreciated hugely. And also, because of the number of universities, we have a concentration of students in Kadıköy. There are other local factors at play and other internal city dynamics that have an impact on the process. Especially after the Gezi Park resistance, Taksim went through a period of change. People and young people no longer felt free in Taksim, and the supply and demand equilibrium changed. And after 2013, it wasn't just the young people, but many businesses closed down shop and moved to Kadıköy, especially in weekdays, weekends. The population increases in Kadıköy by 3-fold, 4-fold, and sometimes at some weekends the overall population reaches 2 million. And that's why Kadıköy has been a haven against social congestion in Turkey. This has been covered by Los Angeles Times and New York Times and Time Out of late. But these increasing numbers in Kadıköy have also brought about certain changes. Some days, the day population is more than 4 times more than the residents, and this has upset the equilibrium in the local businesses, and prices have gone up as well. Unplanned intensity has also been compounded by some international developments, illegal immigrants and refugees, mainly from Syria, Iraq, and Afghanistan. Wars that are being waged in certain parts of the world cause people to flee their homeland. People who want to leave suffering behind pursue a city, a country where they can live in peace. So Turkey and Istanbul has been a transit country for certain refugees en route to Europe, and for some it became a permanent place to settle down. As per the UN report, there are 4 million asylum seekers and refugees in Turkey, 90% of whom are Syrians. This population increase is an external factor, and Istanbul has been affected the most by this influx of refugees. In addition to the registered ones, there are illegal immigrants, foreign nationals that have entered Turkey. So number of asylum seekers, illegal immigrants and refugees are actually more than 1.5 million here in Istanbul. And of course Kadıköy also received its fair share from these developments. We see that Kadıköy accommodation averages are way above Istanbul averages. So refugees opt for Kadıköy not just to reside but to work, because our service industry is quite strong, and in the last couple of years, because of the economic crisis, there are certain enterprises that want to employ cheap labor and immigrants especially, and also recently because of provocative social media posts, certain undesirable incidents took place, and unfortunately in some areas this is still very much going on. We believe that this is because of misperceptions, and that's why within our municipality we decided to publish this booklet in Turkish and in Arabic that covers Syrian refugees, basic rights and responsibilities, international conventions, and a glossary on immigration terminology has been featured in this booklet. We believe that these efforts will go a long way in terms of bringing down prejudices and contribute to coexistence. In short, recently in Kadıköy, irrespective of Kadıköy's internal dynamics, we have been seeing a rise of population, and this situation means that people who live in Kadıköy will now have to open their arms to people coming from different backgrounds, different faiths, different languages, ethnicities, sexual orientation, and so on and so forth. This has required people of Kadıköy to host more people coming from these backgrounds, and this has been made easy by the welcoming and democratic stance exhibited by the people of Kadıköy, especially in the weekends. From Esenler to Pendik, from Yurt to Pendik to Esenyurt, young people have flocked to Kadıköy just to be themselves, and they have come to Kadıköy to sort of express themselves, to experience a place where they can be truly themselves. And those who feel otherized where they live flock to Kadıköy to feel at ease with themselves and to experience peace, and as such become a resident of Kadıköy. Kadıköy is a city that offers countless opportunities in terms of culture. Istanbul has a population of almost 17 million, and unfortunately the only opera building right now is in Kadıköy. Süreyya Opera House serves the entire city. 11 years ago, there were only 2 private company troops, but now we have more than 30 operating in Kadıköy, and we have a 4,000 people, a total of 4,000 seat cinema facilities. And also Kadıköy municipality offers working opportunities to university students. Kadıköy Idea Design Workshop and the Municipal Workshop bring together many different people, and there are 7 libraries, and as such we offer research opportunities to everyone. And also in terms of lifestyle, Kadıköy puts the emphasis on culture, and is quite a center of attraction for people who feel shut out of the society in other parts of Istanbul. Kadıköy is like a safety haven for many and some academic theses have actually been written on the matter. Kadıköy has become increasingly popular, and we have seen some tension between the locals and newcomers in the last couple of years. There was environmental pollution and noise pollution, and that was a problem for the locals. And as a result of the complaints that we received, we had a series of workshops. We invited owners of businesses, designers, local residents, sociologists, and so on and so forth. And we adopted certain projects, and we created a roadmap as a result of that, and in a participatory fashion we were able to resolve this issue just like we did before. We are going to continue to work as a municipality, as a facilitator, bring together all the parties and find a solution to the problems that we face. I think my time is up. But very briefly, in terms of participation, for the next 5 years, we are hoping to draft a strategic plan, and I would like to explain to you how we are going to do that.
Well, we have this digital platform, Anlat Kadıköy, Tell Me Kadıköy, whereby we ask the people living in Kadıköy in what kind of a neighborhood they want to live in the 5 years to come. And these meetings did not take place in the digital platform only, but in 21 neighborhoods of Kadıköy, we reached out to the citizens and held meetings with them, and we asked them. More than 1,000 people participated in such meetings, and 500 different proposals and opinions were actually assessed in our relevant directorates, as a result of which we tried to establish our strategic plan. Of course, after having prepared the strategic plan, we went back to the citizens of Kadıköy and asked their opinion yet again, telling them that that's the plan and what they think about it. So we received feedback from them again, and we prepared a report, and we're going to inform the city council about this next week. And we want to make sure that the people of Kadıköy participate more in the governance of the neighborhood. And we want to create other platforms where they can become part of the decision-making processes. We want to establish the neighborhood councils. We all have our smart phones or our PCs and laptops. So we are going to use this Digi Kadıköy project, which will give you access to the municipality by using your own smartphone. So in about 1 year, people will be able to reach out to the city administration by using an app. Can you wrap up, please? Yes, of course, it's difficult for politicians to stop talking, but let me try. Okay, last two things I would like to say. The economic crisis strikes the vulnerable and disadvantaged groups the most, so inclusiveness in these centers is even becoming more important. What do I mean in these centers? For instance, we have an Alzheimer's center in Kadıköy for a certain age group of people. Then we have our disability-free centers, we have our social centers, and in these centers, we want to make sure that the segments of the society that feel like the other in the community will feel themselves more comfortable. So normally these centers are under the responsibility of the ministry. For instance, Süreyya Opera House that I've just talked about is a facility that is rented by the Kadıköy municipality, but it's the entire Istanbul population that is benefiting from that. We allocated this facility free of charge to the State Ballet and Opera Directorate. Again, we have allocated, again free of charge, to the state institutions one theater hall. So the services that need to be taken by the central government are provided by us, by the local administrations. And it's not only us, the other municipalities are also providing the services that the central government is not providing. So, as I have said in the beginning, faced with the ever-increasing challenges in the modern cities, it's very important to work in coordination and collaboration. So, coordination and collaboration between agencies, exchange of data and sharing information should be our priority. On one hand, we see that the district municipalities authority is being restricted. They don't have a say in the management. Unfortunately, this is hindering local management. With these words, I would like to greet you all with respect. Thank you so much. Next speaker is Özlem Ece Aydınlık. She is a representative of an NGO working in the field of cultural policies. The floor is yours. Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, first of all, I would like to thank the Marmara Municipalities Union for hosting this Marmara Urban Forum, especially in these challenging times where, in line with the SDGs of the United Nations, it's very important to bring together all the stakeholders working in the field of city management or governance. I think this is a very important meeting. In the morning, we have listened to the youth orchestra, Children for Peace. Those who had the chance to listen to that mini concert also saw that social inclusion can be improved by culture and art. So we were able to see that. So when we talk about culture and arts, we're talking about the healing and transformative power of culture and art. So the best example was given in the morning by Music for Peace initiative. Yes, this session is called Living Together, New Approaches and Practices. So let me start by sharing some data with you. I'll also go through my slides. By the end of 2017, the number of people who are forcibly displaced in the world is 70 million, and we have 25 million refugees under the age of 18. What about the number of IDPs? We're talking about more than 40 million IDPs and 3 million asylum seekers. So, stateless people who cannot benefit from education, health, culture, and social rights. We have about 10 million such people. So the communities that are becoming more and more diverse and living together for these communities is very important. We need to discuss how on an equal footing they can live together and coexist. For the last 46 years, my institution has been working to enrich the cultural life in Istanbul. I'm here as a representative of İKSV, Istanbul Culture and Arts Foundation. So I will give you an approach from the cultural policies perspective, and I will try to discuss how culture and arts can play a role. First of all, why a cultural institution is working on cultural policy strategies. İKSV was established in 1973. It is a non-profit culture and arts institution, and the main purpose is to make sure that people of Istanbul are living in an enriched cultural and artistic atmosphere, and we have this mission to play an important role in this field. Well, we are a cultural institution for the last 46 years, but for the last 10 years we have been actively working on cultural policies. So what do? We conduct research in this field, especially for policymakers. We try to provide data and come up with concrete recommendations based on political sciences. We try to reflect the needs of the cultural world and the artists, and we organize meetings, we carry out research, and every year we focus on a specific topic. When we talk about cultural policies, of course there is a lot to talk about, but as I said, we want to develop concrete recommendations and try to create an atmosphere of dialogue about the problems of today. And last year we published our report, which was about exactly the same topic, living together and developing cultural plurality through arts. Faizi Maban and Kim Ligon from Canada wrote this report together. They are the co-authors. And as I've told you, we are communities that are transforming, that are becoming more pluralistic. So cultural pluralism can play a significant role as an instrument in this transformation process. So that's what we tried to assess in our report. Of course, the role of culture and arts. Let me give you some figures about these and some stories we have, human stories we have. But let me give you these striking figures. In 2011, the war broke out in Syria, so about 3.5 million refugees came to Turkey. Turkey is the country that is hosting the largest amount of refugees in the world. More than 2 million of these people are below the age of 25 years old. They are children and young people. And Istanbul is hosting more than 500,000 registered Syrians, and Istanbul is the city, one of the cities that hosts the highest number of Syrians in Turkey. Again, research tells us that in 2015, people were asked the question, would you be concerned by having a Syrian neighborhood? And almost half of the people who responded said yes, they would be concerned if they had a Syrian neighbor. So cultural policies need to be harnessed and used to actually establish the social policies again. So with the host communities and the newcomers, we need to establish links. Thanks to culture and arts, we need to build bridges between the two communities, and this can help us enhance our ability to live together or coexist. During the drafting process of the report, both in terms of cultural plurality and its benefits, we were able to be introduced to a very rich conceptual framework, both in Turkey and Europe. Thanks to citizens' initiatives, we have cultural and arts activities, programs, events. We were able to witness them both in Turkey and in Europe, especially at local level. Culture and arts were used as a means, as a tool to further develop a dialogue, newcomers being integrated with the host communities, and projects about these actually help and accelerate this integration process. Let me give you some examples. For instance, in Berlin, there was a project that was developed. The Berlin Islamic Arts Museum had developed this project called Mutaka for Syrian and Iraqi refugees or migrants, let's say. They started this guided tour project, which evolved into a very comprehensive museum tour. For urban dwellers, this created an employment opportunity for the newcomers, and by using culture and arts, they were able to look at the historic process together. The newcomers, when they arrive at this new city, they should also have some ownership of the cultural heritage. Thanks to this, they can develop that. Again, an example from Turkey, Gaziantep, the Kırkayak Foundation or Association. We are collaborating with them in this project. Independent citizens started this initiative after the Syrian influx in Gaziantep. They were trying to find a way for dialogue, so they transformed themselves, the association, thanks to this project. Most recently with Kırkayak Association as İKSV, we collaborated so that they would enhance their institutional capacity. We provided them with support to do that. So similar NGOs and local administrations are carrying out collaborative efforts, and these are yielding to very productive results, because cultural policies have to be shaped based on needs, especially the artistic world and the professionals in this world and NGOs working with disadvantaged groups can really contribute a lot in this field. We need to discuss them together. As the mayor has said, it needs to be an integrated, inclusive and human-focused cultural planning effort. So all these different elements need to be gathered around a single table to be able to solve all these problems. As I've said, within the framework of our cultural policies initiatives, we carry out some research and prepare reports. So we discuss these matters through social sciences perspective. And we also try to look at the good practices in the world. We are an institution of culture and arts in Istanbul. We have been able to reach out to more than 10 million people as our audience, but we need to diversify the audience and reach out to even more people, and people who have never had the opportunity to participate in the cultural life. We need to have outreach to them, and we should make sure that they are not only passive audiences, but they also start to act in an active way, become citizens who ask questions, and that's the whole purpose of our activities. So we have research activities and reports, and on the other hand we have concrete projects, and thanks to our strategic plan we try to transform ourselves, and we also open our links to the NGOs working in other cities to establish this strong communication network between Istanbul and other cities. And also we work together with the local administrations for especially locally developed policies. We try to have a contact with them because, as I've told you in the beginning, culture and arts can play an important role in terms of establishing this dialogue for accelerating the communication. We have a huge power, and we need to emphasize this power, and we need to make sure that culture and arts are integrated in planning processes right from the beginning. When it comes to disadvantaged groups with no access, for instance, for Istanbul, we have a population of 17 million people. The definition of the disadvantaged group is really very broad. Those who come as a result of migration, children, disabled people, so many groups are considered as disadvantaged. So collaboration of different institutions is very important, and in our own building, we have some activities especially for increasing the access of disadvantaged groups to cultural life. We have this initiative, and the basement of our building is now allocated with the support of Istanbul Development Agency. It's allocated to people who have a difficulty for accessing such cultural activities, those people who have never been able to come to exhibitions or biennales, and we want to make sure that they are integrated with the cultural life. We opened this basement venue in March 2019. So let me make a call here. We want to make sure that more people come to this basement, and we want to integrate these disadvantaged groups with the cultural and artistic life. So I also have a video. If you allow me, I would like to show that to you. Maybe our technical colleagues can help me start the video. Thank you.
Evet, alt kat katılımcı.
Yes, the basement is a venue that is easily accessible. It's a multicultural venue. We want to make sure that everything we create in this venue will be duplicated in other parts of Istanbul and in other cities as well. That was our dream. We wanted to have this multidisciplinary approach to include all the disadvantaged groups, and everything that is created here as a result of workshops. We want to make sure that they are also finding a space for themselves and they become visible in other festivals of Istanbul or in other cities. So in terms of turning these into policies, we always are welcoming the support and assistance. Local administrations really have a lot of opportunities to reach out to citizens, so the cultural policies, that is why most recently are focusing on local policies. So as a cultural institution, we try to provide contribution in this field. So this is all I would like to say. If you have any questions, I will try to answer. Thank you very much for your patience.
Ben de çok teşekkür ederim.
Likewise, we would like to thank you very much. Now let us move on to our third speaker, who is an academic associate professor. Murat Şentürk is his name. He is with Istanbul University School of Letters, Sociology Department. Hello, everyone. I would like to greet everyone once again and pick up from where Özlem has left off. Like today, social inclusion. In terms of social inclusion, volunteers are very important. Voluntary policies are very important. That's what I'd like to talk about. And of course, one more thing that I'd like to emphasize is this. I have only recently started working on this topic, and this is the very first time I'm going to share these insights with you and these recommendations with you. Social inclusion and voluntary work for resilience. Urban resilience, it could be ecologic, economic, and social as well. Recently, after the last earthquake, we have been talking about this quite extensively. This resilience has many different perspectives, and I'm going to focus on social resilience. Social resilience is all about reorganizing individuals, groups, learning from one another, and it is a framework mainly social learning, being participatory, collective transformations. These are some of the components, and of course, social resilience. How can we achieve social resilience or measure social resilience is rather problematic. And I'm not going to go into that, but I'm going to try and present you with a perspective that can underpin social coherence, relationship or network of relationships within a society, discourses. These are all very important. These make up characteristics of a society. I'm going to focus on communication networks and social ties as much as I can. Especially in today's world, in our cities, one of the problems that we encounter is the fact that there are different social groups living in the same city, and there are certain problems, certain themes that are emerging in these cities. When we look at research, we see that spatial segregation is on the up and will continue to go up in the future. Social injustice between different income groups. Yes, there's a wedge between these groups, and social groups are sometimes at a disadvantage, and we see this quite often. Who are these disadvantaged people? Young people, kids, the disabled, the old, and immigrants, and so on and so forth. These different groups within the city, for them to prosper in the city, there are certain steps that we can take. Friendly cities is what this approach is called. Family-friendly cities is what I focused on previously. And as I was working on that, here's what I realized. All child-friendly, family-friendly cities have similar claims. Like, if a city is child-friendly, then it can be friendly for everyone. If a city is elderly-friendly, then it is friendly for all. So this makes sense, but for a city to be friendly, maybe we should adopt a broader approach. Maybe rather than a family-friendly city, we should go for a livable city. But still, friendly cities is an important concept, and I will get back to this at the end of my presentation. We need to supersede groups, and voluntary work can be used as an instrument here. Now, social capital, is it social capital or social interaction? Regarding voluntary work, in the recommendation that I will try and share with you, one of the most important things is this. Voluntary policies, especially on the public side or local authorities side, in these policies, there is something, a component that improves social capital. Mainly, I will focus on social interaction in my deliberations. Social capital for people with low social capital, these are accepted as disadvantage, and their accessibility to volunteer work or voluntary activities would increase their chances and create a common denominator for dwellers of a city. And this is something that we need for social interaction, because these social groups that we're talking about, their interaction is getting more and more restricted in our cities in today's world. At this very stage, there's a couple of things that I'd like to talk to you about. Bauman says that the first modern individual is like a pendulum. On the one hand, they want security, strong ties. On the other, they want to be free. They want loose ties. That's the conceptualization by Bauman. And secondly, in today's world, in today's fluid societies, it's no longer relationships but connections. And this, for Bauman, what this means for Bauman is this. In the past, we used to live in close-knit societies, but now we have mere connections. But another sociologist provides the following discussion. The strength of weak ties. Mark Granovetter is who put this forward. These loose ties give people opportunities and facilitate integration. Strong ties may cause disintegration of a society. So loose ties also have strength, and for social interaction they are important. Yet another concept, invisible ties. This is a new research that was done in Geneva, this conceptualization. And here you have people, despite the fact that they don't have relations with one another, they have some invisible connections. and these connections are weak, but familiarity is very much the case. Let's say you are in a neighborhood, you don't know your neighbor, you don't know their name, but when you see them, and you do see them, you are familiar with them, and when you need to say hi to them, you can say hi to them, or you can communicate with them. So these are some invisible ties that we're not necessarily aware of. So why is this so important? Voluntary work accentuates these ties, these weak ties, and strengthen them. I think it can be a very important tool. And also contact between individuals, groups, and institutions, weak but strong ties, and invisible ties, but still there is familiarity. So, what I have been trying to say here is actually in today's world, on neighbors, on social ties, social relations, we are talking about a framework, and this framework encompasses different perspectives, and yes, ties may look weak, but they might give way to strong ties, and voluntary work could be an instrument for that. From this point onwards, here's what I'm going to try and do. Voluntary work in local authorities, how can it be put to use? I will try and focus on this. Setting up a voluntary department. By the way, allow me to also say that, especially in the last couple of years in Istanbul, the metropolitan municipality and other district municipalities, what they did in terms of voluntary work. I mean, I've had if you make a comprehensive research, look at the documents, and talk to these municipalities, you get an idea as to what is being done. And I'm aware of what's going on, and I will tell you about some of the things that are being done. For local authorities, establishing a voluntary unit, working with voluntary people, working on a voluntary basis is something that I strongly believe in. And also allow me to say one more thing. In voluntary work, also, voluntary people work in a given economic model, and it is an economic output as well, but we're not going to focus on the economic output because sometimes this can be exploitation of labor, and of course we don't want that. Volunteers should be seen as facilitators of social interaction, and that's what I'd like to tell you right now. So the first leg in local authorities, establishing a unit, dedicated unit is important, and secondly, creating awareness is important, especially in organized education. Primary school, secondary school, high school campaigns for visibility. I think this is very important because especially in formative years, if you work as a volunteer, then you continue to work as a volunteer in your adulthood years. At university, in working life, you continue to volunteer. So local authorities must incentivize this, I believe. Capacity improvement, capacity building, trainings, publications, networking. I think local authorities should take responsibility in these realms. And finally, spatial policies must be devised, interaction areas, spatial policies for civil activity to take place. We need to take some action. So as we do these things, what is it that we want to achieve? Why are we doing all of these things? You might wonder. And I think one of the most important things, and in local authorities and in urban studies, we see this quite often, social and spatial belonging, sense of belonging, how to instill that in people. And I think this can help us in that regard. Social responsibility, taking initiatives, it is very important from this point of view as well. Reaching out to all different segments of the society. I mean, people can do something where they live about their streets, about their neighborhoods, And local authorities, in terms of visibility, can support these efforts. And now, today, only a limited number of NGOs try to do this. Beyond NGOs, I think civilian initiatives are very important. Maybe a couple of people getting together and taking initiative, focusing on day-to-day deliverables. Yet another benefit is a personal feeling of well-being. When people volunteer, their life satisfaction appreciates, tolerance, social inclusion. If we ensure interaction, people will get to know one another. Unfortunately, in Turkey, this is one of the biggest barriers. And mainly groups get together with their own members of their own groups. It is important that we create areas where people can get together. Harmony, coping mechanisms, social resilience. If you build capacity with the society, what that means is, in case of impossible natural disasters or man-made disasters, chronic stress, acute shocks, but of course the most important conceptual thing here is social solidarity. Surveys, interviews, these are very important, but all of these being turned into a strategy is equally important. And again, this is something that academics should spearhead and use them as a tool. And also another important thing is trust in actors, trust in the society. For instance, when there's more interaction, local leaders, bureaucrats, technocrats, politicians, understanding them, empathizing with them, will be much easier. So in a way, this is about building trust for public authorities. Life skills is yet another advantage that we can derive out of this process, because visibility means that people will learn how to learn things. And finally, social and cultural capital will be strengthened in this social framework. All of these advantages are actually may sound quite ambitious, and we need to look at whether these will translate into our daily lives. But finally, cities that are friendly for all. We need volunteer work, we need volunteers. That's what I wanted to say. We need to touch people's hearts and reach out to everyone. Thank you. And also, voluntary policies should facilitate social interaction. And yes, some ties may look loose, but they are actually strong or evolving into strong ties. And as such, people coming from different backgrounds, different groups, can happily coexist and understand one another. That's why volunteer work is so important. Thank you. You can send your questions online. Our question application is functioning. Our fourth speaker is Anita Mattsson, and she comes from Sweden, Trieste, mayor of Trieste. Please.
Okay, I was trying that no one would hear me, absolutely. So, I will have this one in Swedish, so if anyone wants to hear, please pick up a headset outside. Jag vill tacka så mycket för att få...
First of all, allow me to thank you for this invitation to this wonderful city. This is a great opportunity for me to be a part of this excellent event. I'm very excited to be here. Tyresö is a mid-sized city. We have 50,000 residents in total, and it is rather small, bearing in mind the Turkish experience. We have around 10 million people living in Sweden. That's the overall population. And we are located in an area that is growing. There are many companies here in this region. And there are certain challenging topics, one of which is the number of housing units. And this is planned by the municipalities. For us to offer our services, this is important, and we have many different responsibilities regarding planning.
25% fram till år 2035.
In our municipality, we're expecting to see a growth of 25% by 2035. We need to plan all the civil society activities in a very careful way. Of course, growing is not enough for us. We also need to strengthen our environment and nature. We have a master plan, which I have brought along with me. If you want to take a look later, please feel free to come and talk to me. We have a plan called Teresa 2035. It's a plan about living together. Trosai has become the first city in Sweden to take into consideration the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And this plan is prepared in a very participatory way together with the citizens and the politicians. Based on this dialogue, Tyresö residents and their core values have been identified. So we want to strengthen these values: sustainability, human, green and blue. So we have our containers, and we have carried out our dialogue with our residents in line with these. And thousands of residents of Tyresö had the chance to come and meet us here. Of course, our identity is important, Teresa's identity is created when everyone involved in the community building sector thinks in terms of sustainable, human, and green way. Everything we need to do needs to protect these sustainable and ecological values. We need to create sustainable long-term environments, and we need to build a sustainable society as we grow. Most probably, the 16-year-old Greta is famous here as well. She is a young Swedish girl. Now everybody knows, thanks to the media, who Greta is. She is one of the pioneers of sustainability. I highly recommend you to follow her. We also attach importance to our values about humans. Even if we construct high rises, we should always pay attention to the human factor. We need to create social gathering spaces, meeting points, and these buildings have to be linked and connected with one another thanks to humans, because people want to see one another, they want to meet each other. So green and blue is another concept. We have a wonderful nature at Treso. We have natural reserves as well. The entire population of Treso is living very close to the nature. Everyone is at maximum 300 meters away from the nature itself, and we are going to continue protecting our nature. Of course, it's very important to protect these values as Treso grows, and we need to do it together. We have 4 themes: active, together, near, varied. And dialogue and communication are the most important binding factors. We need to meet, come together, and take the decisions accordingly. For sustainable development, we have 3 strategies, and we need to work in a strategic way. So we have identified these 3 strategies: defined corridors, different size centers, and the green and blue. The first one, as you see, is both green corridors and development corridors under these defined corridors. We have to protect these green spaces and make sure that the urban settlement areas are merged with these green areas. We also aim at strengthening biological corridors. We want to bring together architecture and back streets. So that more people will benefit from these green spaces. Again, we are identifying different size centers. We want to have so many centers. We have large and small centers. We want to provide opportunities for meeting places and better service and better conditions for transport. We don't want people to be independent on their vehicles. We want them to be able to walk So these centers need to be at walkable distance. Bus stations, for instance, we have small squares around bus stations which create comfort and safety for the residents. Almost everyone moving to Treso say that they've moved there because it's very close to the nature. They are closer to the sea and to the nature, and this concept of green and blue, they want to live in green and blue. So our green and blue character is protected and strengthened. So all these strategies have been agreed upon by different political parties. So the companies that will come and operate here, they know that these are long-term plans, and there is an agreement between the political parties when we take such decisions, so it stabilizes the relations actually. Sometimes, of course, we are in disagreement. Sometimes we don't agree upon who, for instance, should be living in the municipality. A bank director is as important as a hospital caregiver for us. So social sustainability means that there is room for everyone in the society. That is why we believe diversity is very important. Villas and rented houses, we want to have a mix that is affordable for everyone's budget. We have accommodation provided to rich people also. Some municipalities are focusing on providing residential areas for rich people, but they are going to face problems in the future because we are expecting unemployment for some sectors. We need to build residences or buildings that could be afforded by our policemen or caregivers. Otherwise, why would they prefer to live in Tireso? Because the employment market is giving these people the opportunity to live and work wherever they want. So we have to have qualitative housing. We need to have affordable housing provided to such groups as well. With urban regeneration, the house prices also increase. When I was growing up in Treso, everybody in the neighborhood attended the same school. We all went to the same school. If we want to have a sustainable society, we need to make sure that all children get a good education and they attend the nearest school possible. And the best school should be the nearest school. Otherwise, regions with lower income levels will not be attractive for the best teachers. So we need to take into consideration these things as we do our planning. A good society starts with children, so we need to plan accordingly. What is good for children is also what is good for everyone. Thank you. Yes, I would like to thank you as well. So it means that the problems might be different for every country, but they do exist. Our last speaker is the mayor of Esenler, Mr. Tevfik Göksu. The floor is yours.
Saygıdeğer hocam,
Yes, Mr. Chairman, dear participants, mayors, colleagues, academics, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, allow me to greet you all with my deepest regards. And hopefully this is going to be a very fruitful meeting. Welcome once again. Today, we are here at this event organized by Marmara Union of Municipalities, and this is a great platform for all of us, and it's a great opportunity, and I cherish this opportunity. At this meeting, rather than theoretical matters, we focus on practical solutions. I, as someone coming from the field, I will focus on some concrete deliverables. We are here to discuss coexistence and what municipalities are doing in Turkey. Yes, when we talk about coexistence, the first thing that comes to our mind, actually there are four main components that spring to mind. Coexistence, well, the first thing that comes to my mind is political concepts, but it could take hours to discuss these political concepts, but today we would do better to talk about spatial equivalence or social equivalence, or the overarching perhaps city that we need to focus on. Esenler is one of the largest districts of Istanbul, and 2030 sustainable cities shows Esenyurt as a model municipality. From this point of view, allow me to explain what we have done in terms of coexistence in Esenler from a spatial point of view. Especially, there are certain practices that we have introduced, and I will try and focus on them. When you conceptualize a city or when you design a city, you need to have a destination in mind. That is to say, you need to take the city from A to B, and you need to have a conceptualization vis-à-vis the future to build upon the already existing city. We started with this, and we gave a name to this effort. We want Esenler a child-friendly municipality. If a city is child-friendly, then that city will be friendly for all. And we wanted to turn Esenler into a city that welcomes children. That's why we had to go through a three-phase transition. First of which is institutional development, followed by urban development, followed by social development. If we can change the city in these three phases and transform the city in these three phases, we would be able to build on the city and build a new future. That's how we embarked on this journey. First of all, we wanted to focus on a change of mindset in Esenler municipality. And yes, this municipality belongs to us all. People entering through the gates of this municipality, regardless of their gender, their background, ethnicity, faith. we will not be discriminatory, and this municipality will serve all sorts of living beings and all sorts of people. And secondly, in order to find the right perspective for the city, in order to have a strong scientific basis, we've done something unprecedented in Turkey for the first time. The very first urban think tank in Turkey was established by us. By establishing this think tank, we established this think tank, and we wanted to bring together everyone who works on this area, who works on urban matters. We wanted to benefit from their expertise. We've had workshops, periodicals, and last year, actually, in terms of urban publishing, we were recognized with the municipality with the highest number of publications. We came the first in Turkey. So within this perspective, our think tank has been undertaking great deal of things, and I've been the mayor for the last 11 years, and I do my best to explain this at every platform, and I think for this meeting this makes quite a lot of sense. That's why I'd like to touch upon this. Our urban think tank has a very important workshop activity. What we call the city actually entails a lot about spatial planning, but now in today's world, in addition to spatial planning, which is a technical feat, we would do better to also focus on sociological planning for our cities, and we should create a master plan, sociological master plan for our cities. And that's the one thing that we did with these guidelines that we published, and we shared this with the public at large. And our urban think tank has had many publications, and we've had tons of workshops, like I said, and thanks to these, in Esenler, we were able to make sure that all our steps were based on scientific foundations, based on theoretical foundations, and that's what helped us on this journey. And that's why in 2009, when I first became the mayor, in satisfaction surveys, when we asked people whether they were satisfied with living in Esenler, the percentage was 62%, and now it's more than 90%. The rate at which people are happy to be living in Esenler. So if you build capacity within the institution, and the space or the city appreciates as well. The Cuban sociologist Calvera once said that our cities are like our dreams. They are built on fears and hope. Yes, our cities are really built on hopes and fears. When we look back, we realize that these cities have encouraged hopes and fears. People either dream about things that they fear, or dream about things that they hope will happen. And we've had many immigrants coming from Midlands, from Anatolia. People came to Istanbul, and they put a shelter over their heads and sought employment. And once they found employment, they knocked down their initial dwellings and built a new one. And then they had kids that had to be married off, and then another story on top. And that house is never demolished, but built upon. And our cities are like this as well. From a spatial point of view, we have many serious problems in many different parts of the city. One of these districts is actually Istanbul's Esenler. It's right at the heart of Istanbul, and spatial development is important. The change of the city. If the change does not happen, if the city does not renew itself, then the space will have to change, because everyone will have to, you need to build places for people to coexist. To coexist, you need spaces at which you can get together with people, and from that point of view, the city needs to go through a physical transition period. In October 2012, urban transformation process was initiated in Turkey, and we are one of the municipalities that have made greatest of strides in this realm, and 189,000 units are currently to be found in Esenler, and we have worked on which proportion of these need to be transformed. Based on 06 data, 98,000 units, housing units, had to be renewed. Still have got to be renewed. So far we have renewed 56,000 housing units. And on Thursday, last week, we had an earthquake, and what scared me the most was, I was scared that people would lose their lives, but luckily none of that came to pass. Thankfully, no one suffered a wound. Now, we go along with these transformation processes, and also we are hoping to take other steps. Here's where Esenler is located. We have an area of 1,800,000 square kilometers, and in this area, 500,000 people live. 700,000 is the unofficial figure in this area only. So, in 30 years, this is this building stock that dates that is of 30 years. 86% of these didn't have permits, and this colored area are rather problematic in terms of earthquake. And after an arduous process, we were able to transform 40% of our municipality and reduce this down to 60%. So now, this is our earthquake map. And heaven forbid, if an earthquake strikes, these are the areas that will be damaged by the earthquake. So with this starting point, like I said at the beginning, in this area, this bit is our reserve area. It's the military zone, and this is a 7.4 million square meter area. And in this 8 million square meter area, as Esenler municipality, we took over this area from the state, and now the Council of Ministers announced this as a reserve area, and now we are building a brand new city in this area. Why? In order to transform this building stock, and the buildings on this line, we want to transform them. Street by street, building by building, you can see when they are going to be transformed. 40,000 housing units will be transferred, will be rebuilt. And right now, this project is underway, and we are building this very city that you see on the slide. This is one of the largest gardens in Istanbul. It's operational right now, and it serves the people of Istanbul. And this is still being constructed, and luckily, hopefully, by the end of this year, we will have 4,000 new housing units. They're groundbreaking, I mean. And this city that you see here, and this city that you see here, it will be one of the smartest in the world. And our Ministry of Transport and Technology and Communications, actually, with a protocol, they have lent support to make this one of the smartest cities in the world, to offer the highest level of comfort to its residents. And these buildings are going to be low-rise. We are going to focus on neighborhood, living together, rather than ghettoization. We are going to make sure that we create an environment where people can communicate with one another, and people will be able to get hold of everything within 400 meters. It's going to be a model, not just for Turkey, but for the world over. And one of the greatest gardens, nation's gardens, as we call them, like I said, is here. And here, the second phase of the project is being concluded. Again, another garden will be built here, 1,800,000 square meters. 2 more gardens are going to be operationalized. And regarding urban transformation, this city, with its history, with its culture, and with its spaces, it's ready, and the construction is underway, and it is going to be a model for Turkey, like I said. And right now, the construction is underway. If you're curious, we'd be happy to show you around. Now, on the one hand, you develop the city, you transform the city, and I know my time is about to run out, but you also need to focus on different activities, for instance. Now, in the city, people live or get together at parks, and you see some of the most important parks that we're constructing, and people flock to these parks to make use of the opportunities provided to them by these parks. Another first in Turkey, and a global first as well, the Children's Street. We are the municipality to do this first. We are building children's streets. On these children's streets, these are not just pedestrian streets. At the same time, in addition to being pedestrian streets, you have indoor cinema, indoor libraries. You have areas where children can get together with their mothers, spend quality time with their mothers, libraries, playrooms, play areas, cinema, theaters, and so on and so forth. So these are also quite important. And also at the same time, we have, as you know, we have traditional street games in Turkey. And on these streets, children can play traditional games, and we train them about how to play these games. And hopefully, we are going to take a step further from a children's street. We are going to move towards a children's neighborhood. What does this mean? We are going to close an entire neighborhood to traffic. Streets will belong to kids, and pedestrians will belong to the elderly. No vehicles allowed. Maybe garbage trucks and ambulances and so on and so forth. We are going to shut off an entire neighborhood to traffic, and hopefully, inshallah, this is going to be a great first for us as well. Now, yet another thing, this is one of the greatest metropolitan areas in the world, and one of the things that are sorely needed is this, a cross-generational communication, ensuring cross-generational communication, right? Our grandfathers, grandmothers, they hold an important role in our society and in our tradition. It is very important. Hosting your parents in your own house or taking care of them in your own house is something that is an integral part of our culture. So for our grandfathers and grandmothers, we want them to spend quality time with their grandchildren, and we want them to assume responsibility within the family. So this is a center for grandchildren, grandfathers, and grandmothers. At any time they want, people will come here and do all sorts of activities. Grandparents will play with their kids, and grow plants, fruit and vegetables in the allotment in these centers, and this is going to contribute to the social and sociological transformation of the city. On the one hand, you have children's kids. On the other hand, you have these areas that are going through a transformation. And a second, I know my time is up, so I do not wish to take your further time, but another project is tea houses for senior citizens, where people can come and drink tea free of charge. And also we will offer them shuttle services. We call it the Second Spring tea houses. It's a magnificent ambience. Now, this is how the city is evolving, but you create all these areas, all these spaces, and right now in terms of culture, in terms of social activities and social spaces, you have all these facilities, but in order to build on that, you need further projects. And from this point of view, We have actually patented 22 projects. These are large-scale projects. And these social projects, all of them are actually are being studied by universities. And these, from cradle to the grave, these projects pertain to everyone living in the city and will touch upon their lives and will include them in the processes as well. So if you're an elderly person living in the city, there's a project about you. If you're a youth, again, likewise, if you're a merchant, yes. If you are wealthy, yes. If you're poor, another project for you. So there is something for everyone. And we reach out to all segments of the society. And as Jesus said to describe a city is the most precious state of mind for a city, for people. He said, it's an Ottoman tradition, free loaves of bread. In Esenler, we hand out loaves of bread to the poor. Yes, that's guaranteed by our municipality, and there are bakeries that partner with us. On a digital screen, you can see how many loaves of bread are available. Poor people can see this on the screens and go and fetch their bread. We also have dispensers, soup dispensers. All across Esenler, we have soup dispensers. Poor people can also go and drink soup on their way to work every morning. No one needs to worry. When you go to the subway station, there will be a dispenser, soup dispenser, and you will get your bowl of soup every morning. And Edim is a first in Turkey as well, and this is a social market. But this social market is very important because in Esenler we don't distribute foodstuffs in a parcel, but we give everyone a card and load credits onto their cards. So this is like a supermarket. People will go and like a food bank, but will purchase or use their credits to get foodstuffs. And Edim is also directly linked to ESCAM, an employment project that we have. ESCAM is all about creating jobs. And the card holder will be able to also this very card. The card holder will receive points for 6 months, and after that, if they are in a position to work, then 3 months later, the ESCAM Employment Bureau will offer them a job for employment. And if they don't like the first one, we say fine. But after the second 3-month period, if they don't like the second offering, their card will be confiscated, to make sure that we help the poor and those in need only. If someone is really poor, then we will help them, definitely. Yes, this employment center, and also for families we have another center. And Esmatik is another project that I'd like to tell you about for the 21st century, where we have a lot of natural disasters. This is very important. In Turkey, we are committed to zero waste. We have made great strides in this regard. As Esenler municipality, we want everything to be recycled. And right now, the second phase of this is underway. With Esmatik, we will be able to offer children pocket money. And at different parts of Esenler, we have Esmatik devices. Recyclable material will be deposited in these boxes, and they will be earning credits, and that will be uploaded on this card. And children will go to the cafeterias of their schools and will not ask for pocket money from their mother. Will get recyclable bottles and packaging and turn it into money in the school. I already told you about our children's street, and also as the Kadıköy municipality was talking about it, I was reminded of this. We have this project called Aklı Esenler, a CCTV 24/7. Well, actually, people are filmed. We have hundreds of thousands of statements by the members of the public. And our think tank brings together all this footage and they turn it into a project. So from the cradle to the grave, we listen to everyone and we hear people's feedback, and that is another project. So in short, municipalities are important, their vision is important. The vision must be about coexistence. The space, municipal spaces should be about coexistence. And when you do that, when you instill a sense of togetherness in the residents of a city, then that city will prosper and coexistence will prosper. That's why we have these three main tenets as Esenler municipality. As Esenler municipality, we are committed to providing every individual with three things: goodness, peace, and prosperity. Thank you so much, sir. Our time is up. We need more time for Q&A. So these three main tenets, we need to get on the same page: goodness, peace, and prosperity. Thank you very much indeed.
Evet, ben de çok teşekkür ederim. Şimdi
Yes, thank you so much. Well, of course, being a citizen of a country in theory matters, but if you are unsatisfied with the national policies of your country, then you have the option to migrate to another country. But in terms of municipalities, in the metropolitan area, the municipalities are competing with one another. If you're not satisfied with the services of one municipality, you can move and start living in a different municipality. So the local administrations have this advantage. There are a lot of different policies, local policies. So this is the last 10 minutes. And I am also seeing your questions here. Can somebody help me to turn this on? Yes, I turned it on. It's okay. Yes, I will ask the questions that I see here online. Mr. Özlem, this is for you. The question says, we want art to reach out to everyone. However, why is the priority given to the tulip card holders for İKSV Foundation activities? It's very expensive to get that card, and we have difficulty buying the tickets. Yes, it's good to see that there's interest in our activities. The cultural background or infrastructure of Istanbul is, of course, very difficult to reach out to. I wish we would, as the foundation, would be able to reach out to the entire city. However, Istanbul has a very restricted infrastructure. There are only a few facilities or venues that could host international events, and the existing facilities do not have the technical equipment and infrastructure. So the international activities organized by İKSV have to take place in certain locations and venues, and the capacity is restricted, limited. The second thing I would like to say is that we need to look at the microsystem in Turkey. Unfortunately, there is almost no public support for culture and arts. The support or funds in this field are coming from the private sector, not the public. And İKSV is a non-profit organization that is getting 75% of its revenues thanks to private donations. And also, supporters are important. Members of the Tulip Card that are supporters of our foundation create 6% of our budget. That's why we give the priority to these card holders who wholeheartedly support our foundation at all times, and their existence is very important. Imagining that we are diversifying our funds and budget, Their support is important. Yes, it's a problem that tulip card holders have some priorities in exchange of supporting our foundation financially. But we also have free of charge activities, which is one of which is going on. It's totally free of charge, taking place in 3 different locations in Turkey. So access opportunities need to be improved for the disadvantaged groups, and we are developing many different practices. Culture and arts card is one example that gives more opportunities to students. Thanks to our leading sponsor, Eczacıbaşı Holding, we are able to do that. So we're trying to improve ourselves in this field, but of course local and central government support is very important for cultural institutions such as ours, as well as independent artists. I hope I've been able to answer the question. Okay, thank you. Second question is for the mayor of Kadıköy. You talked about an app that will be put into use next year in Kadıköy. What about the senior groups? How will they use that mobile app? Because they are not very tech savvy. How will you make sure that the senior citizens will also use that app? Well, in my speech, I did not only talk about the mobile app, but I also said we will have the neighborhood councils. For those people who cannot provide their opinions through the technology, they can come to these neighborhood councils and express themselves. By the way, senior citizens living in Kadıköy are really able to use the technology very well. There is no age problem in our neighborhood. Okay, thank you. Yes, there is a question for Mr. Tevfik, Mayor of Esenler. You said you will make the neighborhoods pedestrian neighborhoods and close it for traffic. Then how are you going to solve the car park problem for the residents? Yes, the car park problem is not the problem of Esenler only. It's a huge problem in everywhere in Istanbul. I think car ownership rate has increased by 3-fold in the last 10 years in Istanbul. So number of car ownership increased by 3-fold, but the roads didn't grow by 3 times. But there is a solution at Esenler for that, because in the new settlement area, we have about 1.5 million square meters of land transferred to the other side. So when we transfer 1.5 million square meters, we will keep that land unoccupied and use it as a car park. So in the coming 2 to 3 years, the car park problem will no longer be there in Esenler. But in terms of parking problem, we had a capacity of 30,000. Now the capacity has increased, but 50% of the car parks are empty. There is a question about the earthquake. Are the buildings that have gone urban transformation, are they earthquake resistant? Well, the transformed new houses are resistant for an earthquake of scale of 9. There is a lot of concrete areas. Wouldn't it be better to have green spaces instead? The question is. Well, I don't know who asked that question, but that person should come to me. Everywhere is green in our neighborhood, in our district. It's not concrete. So the person who asked this question, I invite them to come and visit our nation garden. You talked about a children's street. You said we want to create places that are suitable for mothers and children. The question is, what about fathers? Won't fathers spend time with children? Let's take care of the mothers and children first, and then let's take care of the fathers later. Because this children concept is very important for us, because if we design our cities accordingly, it would be very good, because living together is what the citizens need the most nowadays. If a child is able to live peacefully in a city, everyone can live peacefully. If a child feels happy, everyone can feel happy. And in a city where the child feels happy and peaceful, the mother will be happy and peaceful, the father will be happy and peaceful. So with these children's streets and neighborhoods, we will also be serving the fathers, I guess. Okay, one last question. Last question. Again, it's for you. So you talked about this children's neighborhood for a child-friendly city. What about children who are not living in that child neighborhood? Is it going to otherize them? How are you going to make sure that all children access this? And I also have a question, in addition to that, as a follow-up. Our cities are, of course, huge, crowded places with structures, and then people are becoming lonely. So we have this concept of localizing the local administration. I mean, we have the concept of neighborhood, for instance. The new municipality law defines this very well. In the previous law, this wasn't a very strong concept. So how are you going to enshrine this neighborhood identity at a neighborhood scale? Because we had very warm neighborhood relations, neighborly relations in the past, but now it's no longer the case. The walls used to surround cities in the past. Now the walls are surrounding the neighborhoods. We have a speaker from Sweden, and they talk about social municipality services when designing services. How can we design them in a way that they will bring social integration and cohesion? Okay, when you design a neighborhood as a child neighborhood, would the child in another neighborhood feel himself as the other? No, of course not, because all children will be able to use these neighborhoods. In line with the car park facilities, if you close a neighborhood for vehicles, you need to provide, of course, car park facilities. So what we want to attain is to make sure that all neighborhoods in Esenler will be child-friendly neighborhoods. That's the aim. And when we design it, we design, for instance, the hospital as a child hospital, or the police station as a child police station. We have training centers for kids below the age of 6. So everything, all the priority will be on the children. So when we make a neighborhood a child-friendly one, we want to make sure that we give children how the culture of a neighborhood functions. It's going to be a very good role model. We will start with one neighborhood and then continue with the others. Okay, then, ladies and gentlemen, this brings us to the end of our session. Thank you very much for your participation. I also would like to thank our speakers for sharing their valuable information with us. Good evening.